Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, also best-selling author, and every single day I help others unlock the potential and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest on this show. We interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, multimillionaires, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome adversity, challenges, and of course, their keys to success. And today's guest is definitely somebody who can add some insight into that because of his very, very unique perspective and mindset. I mean, I've had the honor of sharing a virtual stage with him recently, and when he speaks, people listen because he has this championship mindset. He has over 15 plus years of experience coaching in that mental game, that championship mindset. He loves helping busy business owners implement these high-performing systems so that when they can grow their businesses, they can actually go to sleep and not worry about anything at all. He enjoys the waves of life. He enjoys uplifting entrepreneurs become more and more successful. And he truly believes that the only limitation that you have are the stories that you're telling yourself. So please welcome marketing strategist, business coach, influencer, UFC fighter, and speaker, Mr. Clifford Starks.
Thank you, Fong. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Excited to be on.
It is not every day I get to talk to somebody who made a living putting themselves into a ring where fists and feet and legs are coming at full speed, and your job is to block or get hit and respond. So this is an absolute experience for me. Tell us, how did your journey start from where you were to becoming a UFC fighter to becoming a business influencer coach right now? I mean, that's not usually the path that people take.
Yeah, 100%. So, I had actually three very unique experiences at a very young age. And they taught me lessons that still guide me to this day. My biological dad ended up driving out of my life, and I was 4 years old at the time. And I knew he wasn't coming back, kind of reading his energy. And my mom would say he was going to come back, but you just sometimes know. You can read things, and I knew he wasn't going to come back. And then from there, my grandfather ended up passing away. And so my grandfather passes away. I'm this 5-year-old kid, and I'm frozen stiff. It's, how you have that fight, flight, or freeze. Well, I was frozen, and I didn't know I was doing it at the time, but I coached myself through the process. And I gave myself options. And the options are, okay, you're going to die. That's happening for sure. So you can just accept the fate and be frozen, or you can live as much life as you can. And so I chose, I'm going to live a life. I'm going to live a life worth living. And then my mom remarried to a man I call dad to this day. He was an amazing individual, amazing insights, and amazing belief systems and habits that he instilled in me. And going through that, I came about with saying, okay, there's people who are supposed to be there, and they're just not going to be there. They're gonna sometimes drive out of your life. There's people who don't have to be there, and they're going to be there, and we're all going to die. So live as much life as you can, and go. Just be free in life. You're always free, and no one claims whether you're free or not to do what you want to do. Ask yourself the question, is this something you want to do? And if it is, do it.
And so that path led you to what? To pursuing a certain career, or did it go to fighting right away?
I live very intentional with life, and so I can only be intentional with what I'm aware of, right? And so I'll give you an example. I was aware that I was overweight. I was an overweight kid, and I saw myself in the mirror, and I didn't like what I saw, so I focused on changing it. And it's never as easy as we think it's going to be at first. Change is always difficult when you're first making the change, but you eventually learn what you need to learn, right? You learn what you need to learn, and you get to where you're looking to go, and you start applying the habits and the principles and the process. So I went from that, and every time you have a dream and you reach a dream, you go after a bigger dream. And so my next dream was, oh, I want to help other people do the same thing. And so that's what got me into kinesiology and studying at ASU and helping people through that process. Now, all along, I was doing athletics too. So I became a state champion in wrestling and a state champion in the shot put, All-American in football, doing amazing things along the way. Ended up being a personal trainer. And I went through that process. And you get a challenge, you stretch yourself, and then there's a new challenge you want to go after. And so my crazy ass, I go, what's the hardest thing that I can do? Like, what would be like insane where most people wouldn't do it? And that's where fighting came in. I'm like, we give that a try. And I'll tell you, just the sparring alone, like the mental battle and it's a major mental battle. And your mind's challenging you and telling you what not to do and saying, what are you doing? And this is nuts and get out of there. Don't step in there. You know, you're going to get punched. And I liked it. I liked it. And I wanted to see, like, is this something that I can do as a career? Can I make a career out of this? And I started doing it. And what I like so much about it was, one, it's crazy as hell, right? Most people are like, don't do that. And then two, you have to learn fast, because if you're getting knocked out left and right, like, that's not good for the brain. So I'm like, okay, I get to find opportunities and see who I can be, right? And I get to test myself. It was competitive. It was competitive to me, and I also wanted a stage. My stage is teach people how to love one another, because I know how important that is. You know, like, I knew when I was this young kid, I had to take care of me. No one else was going to do it. I needed to do it for me. And so I trained. I told my coach I wanted to fight in the UFC in less than a year. And this is what makes it super fun. Why not go after the biggest dreams that people are going to doubt you on, right? Like, that's how I think about life, because the worst that can happen is you are better for going through the journey than not going through it. And my coach, he's judging me.
I'm thinking so many other things that could go wrong. What worse can happen? Maybe, I don't know, get punched out. I don't know, concussions.
Yeah.
But not going through the process. That's the worst thing. I'm like, okay, continue.
Yeah. Well, it's like so my mind works in opportunities, right? It's always looking at opportunities. And the other piece, so I do see all the bad sides too. I just know that the good sides, if I follow the process correctly, the reward is going to outweigh the risk, right? So as a professional fighter, you're 100% right. Like, if you don't train like a professional, if you don't do the professional things, you're done. It's a wrap. But if you do the professional things and you take care of yourself in a professional manner, you will shock the world. And so that's where my mind goes. It goes into, like, okay, let's go after it. Let's see what we can do. Let's give it a try. And my coach, like, yeah, he was judging me. And he goes, he takes me up on the side the next day and he goes, Cliff, you're not fighting in the UFC in less than a year. Like, it doesn't happen. You're going against the best of the best of the best. Like, it's just not going to happen. And I remember I asked, I go, Coach, we got to try. Can we at least try? And he gives me this smirk. He's like, all right, let's give it a try. Right. Now, here's what's super cool. And I want to remind everybody, this is how great all of us are. We all have this capability to do this. In 5 weeks' time, I went from a person who didn't think it was even possible to seeing possibility. He thought we could actually pull this off because I was excelling so quickly. I wasn't excelling quickly because of a certain skill that I had or an ability that I had. I had the desire, and desire plus the right training, you'd be surprised what you can pull off. And it literally you'd be surprised what you can do in 4 weeks. Mine was 5, right? So in 5 weeks, he's like, we might be able to pull this off. And so I took a doubter and turned the doubter into a believer. Now, as entrepreneurs know and fighters know, things rarely just go to plan. Like you don't just start walking and like, oh, there's a bridge. Let me walk across this bridge, get what I need to get, and make it happen. Woo, I got it. It's always a lot harder than that. So I had to deal with cracked ribs, kind of fractured my nose, sprained ankle, just things didn't go to plan. And that's okay because you always have an opportunity. And so I'm like, okay, where's the opportunity? Where's the opportunity? So when I had cracked ribs, I remember I couldn't train for like 10 weeks. What I did was I would sit in the ring and I would watch other fighters fight and see what they would do and diagnose what was working versus what wasn't working. And like, oh, okay, I can do this, I can do this, I can try this, I can work on this. And when I got healthy again, I was actually a more polished technician because I was very, very intentional with what I was visualizing. And so I went through that process and we ended up making it in 10 months. We got there less than a year. And it was crazy because we're getting ready to walk down the stage and he's like feeling it like I can't believe we pulled this off. Because he's taken 17 other people to the UFC. This wasn't his first rodeo, but it was one of his fastest rodeos.
Wow.
And that's where I say I'm that guy who, if you have a crazy dream, you probably want to share it with me, unless you're not willing to take the action. If you're not willing, then don't share it with me because I'm just going to make your life a nightmare. But if you have a big dream and a big goal, lay it on me. I want to know about it.
What was okay? You constantly talk about the opportunity that kept you driven to pursue this new adventure of being in the ring, fighting, and all that kind of stuff. What was that opportunity that drove you? Like, is it the feeling of winning that first match? Was it the money that you're gonna make? What was that driving force? Because it's not.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. So simply put, so remember that scared little kid? That scared little kid's with me all the time. And ultimately, I want to live a life worth living. And so to live a life worth living, it's always changing and it's always going to stretch. It's always going to be a new challenge. You know, now I want to influence 1 billion people like a crazy person, you know, and that's it's always like, what's next? What's next? What's next? It's not well, I've done enough. I'm done. No, I've done enough when they're carrying my casket. That's when I've done enough. You know, that's that's where I'm like, we have opportunities and they're everywhere all the time. I go for the thrill of life. Life is an adventure. It's an experience. So I'd experience it fully.
Wow. I mean, like for someone like yourself to go through that process, it takes a really, really strong mind to keep on going. Like when you get injured, the first hit, the first loss, there must be what did you tell yourself? Was it some mantras that you recited? Was there some mind feed stuff that you did? What kept you going, even though if you're getting put down, even though if you're getting knocked out, even though if you're getting hit? What kept you?
Yeah. So I wrote down my goals and I put them on the refrigerator. And now here's the thing. I have something, I call it unshakable faith. And sometimes people, I don't want to miscoin people on this, but they think unshakable faith is like, I just have to have faith and do this thing. No, you do the thing before you have to have the faith. See, I think that's what gets people in a lot of trouble is I want to have the habits. So when I need the habits, they're there for me to utilize. And so I focus on, okay, what does a disciplined UFC fighter look like? The day I said I want to be in the UFC, I was already in there. See, what my coach didn't get was he didn't realize I'm already in that place. It's intentional. You know, it's speaking in such a way and acting in such a way where it's there's a saying, thoughts, feelings, actions, results, right? And the action's the bridge. It's the bridge. But if you have to have the thoughts right first. If the thoughts aren't right, the actions aren't going to be right. If the thoughts are wrong, then the feelings are going to be wrong, then the actions are going to be wrong, then you're going to get crappy results. And so if you think as if you already have it, your actions will play as if, and you'll manifest that reality.
Well, take us through that first fight. That first fight where
Yeah.
you're walking into the ring, where the octagon closes. You're stuck in that cage now. There's no getting
Yeah.
out. There's the fans. There's the high. There's the TV. What was going in your mind? It's like, yeah, I'm here.
Yeah.
Shoot, I'm here.
So my fight, um, Trevor is like, I can't believe we did this. How did we do this? And I was like, hey, we did it. And now let's see what else we can do as we're going through the process. So I'm walking to the cage, and I knew this guy was a dangerous fighter. He had heavy hands and he could hurt you. And I knew, like, okay, I gotta be smart. But here's what's interesting. So sometimes people think being being smart is avoiding things. That is the worst thing to do in a fight, especially a high level fight. I cannot avoid him. And if I try to avoid his power, I'm going to definitely get hit by his power. So I have to be able to stay in the moment, stay focused, react when I need to react, and respond when I need to respond. I wanted to stay close and in the pocket with him because he's a longer guy. And I didn't want to be at the end of his punches because that would make for a long, long night. Now, to your entrepreneurs, SWOTs, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And they're always there all the time, whether you're in a UFC arena or whether you're in the entrepreneurial arena. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to maximize on my strengths, lower his strengths, maximize on his weaknesses, lower my weaknesses, find my opportunities, and avoid the threats. His threat, two heavy hands. He can hurt you. He can hurt you bad. And he's longer than strengths. He's longer than I am. He has more distance than I do. He had probably more jujitsu skills back then because I was still, even though I was polished, I was still very new to the game. I hadn't played it that long. And so he had that. The weaknesses, I had his weaknesses, he didn't have wrestling, and I knew that. Mm-hmm. I know he's used to keeping people at the end of his punches, so I was going to smother him and stay really, really close. The opportunities, when those come, you just have to take them, and I know, Fong, you know about that. Like, when it comes, you have to know that it's coming. And unfortunately, I wish I could tell people, like, you're just going to know. No, you have to have experience to know. Like, you have to go through the reps. It is what it is. And that's why everybody tells you you have to go through reps, because even when an person is telling you what to do and what to look for, you're not going to know until you've gone through your process. You have to go through your process.
Now, being in the life of a professional fighter, was it everything that you've expected, or was there something that you go, I didn't think it would be like this? Like, anything that you expected in that life, or was it all?
You know what? What I'll say is anything ever what we think we expected? Like, we get through it and we're like, oh crap, I didn't know about that or this over here. But what I will say, my entrepreneurial journey has taught me so much when it comes to marketing and sales and branding yourself. And I look back at some of the great fighters, like your Conor McGregor, your Floyd Mayweathers, your Mike Tysons, your Muhammad Ali's. And there was a process. There was a process that they took. And it's a very entrepreneurial business strategy-minded process. Now, those were things I didn't see as clearly as I do now as I'm going on my entrepreneurial journey. But I also can't take anything back because we can only move in the present moment, right? What I could have done better was really brought my fans closer to me and understand my experiences, my story, my journey, what I've been through, my trials and my tribulations. And I didn't. And so we even had a message of sitting on the stage reminding people to love one another, it had to be polished, it had to be tightened, it had to have that snap, that feel for people go through their process. And yeah, I didn't realize how much fighting was a business. It is a business
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And if you know that you're in business, you're in a good place. If you don't, not so good place.
Now, for me, when UFC first came out, it really didn't appeal to me. I mean, oh, it's just two people just fighting. It didn't look like there was any strategy. It didn't look like there was any
Yeah.
technique. It's just two people fighting each other to like a bloodbath kind of thing, right? I think there's a lot of people out there who still view it as that. What do you say to people about what they're not understanding about UFC and what they're missing out on? Because I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan's podcast, so I hear a lot of fighters speak and their interviews and whatnot. So I have a little of an insight as to, okay, I get where they're coming from. But for somebody who's in it, who does it, what do you tell the common person about UFC that they probably don't understand?
So there's a saying, what I hear I tend to forget, what I see I tend to remember, what I do I tend to understand. I was overweight, I ended up losing the weight, I understood it better. And there were a lot of things that I didn't know that I needed to know. There were a lot of things I needed to learn. When I fought the first time, I thought fighting was a pretty easy thing. I thought you get hit, or you hit and don't get hit. Simple enough. Then I got into it and I realized that's not it at all. There's levels to this game. There's levels to it. Then I got into entrepreneurship and it was more of the same. I'm thinking to myself, all right, I just ask a few questions, make money, serve people, and I'm off to the races. It was a lot harder than I thought. And the one thing that I do know, I've been humbled by life, and me wanting to live a life worth living, it humbles me every single day. It's something that I 100% appreciate. I appreciate everyone in their journey and their process and what they're doing. And if they don't think it's hard, well, give it a try.
Mm-hmm.
You know, anything that you think is simple and easy, give it a try. Because I think it will humble you into, holy crap, I didn't see all of these layers behind this game.
Mm-hmm. How was the transition like for you from ending your UFC career to becoming an entrepreneur, business coach, and influencer? How did you manage that?
Tried to sprint, bumped my knees up left and right, made mistakes. There's this saying, right? I got to learn about this. I got to learn about this. But sometimes we just have to remember stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we have to step back and go like, wait a minute, what am I doing? And so I started getting on the YouTube. I got some online coaching courses. I did that, and it gave me a little bit of success. But as I was looking at it, like I wasn't getting the personal one-on-one coaching that I needed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you absolutely need that to move into, like, it depends where you want to play. If you're looking to play in the big leagues, you need those people. And I didn't say, I want to fight in the UFC, let me do this by myself. No, I had a coach, I had my team, I had all of these pieces in place. And the entrepreneurial journey, like, I was really being a solopreneur and making my life harder than it needed to be. And so the transition was rough. You know, it was really rough because I thought, okay, if I just grind enough, if I just do enough, if I just move enough, that I'll get to it. My discipline, I say, can be a blessing and a curse. If I'm disciplined in the wrong things, it's not serving me. And so I learned, oh crap, I'm being disciplined in things that are not serving me right now. And now it's time to get disciplined in the things that do serve me and the things that do leverage my abilities and my skills and my abilities. So as I started doing that, things started becoming easier and easier. I'm like, holy crap, this is such a psychological game that we're all playing.
Mm-hmm. Now, you work with a lot of business owners, a lot of corporations, companies. What's that missing factor that they are lacking? that stopping
Yeah.
them from pursuing greatness? Because I know you're helping them with systems, implementing different strategies. What's the most common thing that they're missing that most other coaches or business entrepreneurs or consultants are unable to see, but you can because of your background and your unique perspective of things?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'm actually thinking of it in a different way because I like how this goes. As a fighter, you're under a very pressured situation. If you are not listening to your coach and not listening to your own internal as well, because you got to listen to both,
Mhm.
you're in trouble. And so what's cool is the most powerful thing is the ability to listen. When we can listen, when we can really hear people. But it's not just hearing people, it's hearing people under stress, under tension, under the conditionings that we have. You know, if a person gets triggered, all of a sudden it's a lot harder to listen.
Mhm.
But as a fighter, you are being triggered by the moment because there's a guy trying to knock you out or submit you. There's a guy, you're in danger.
Mhm.
That is dangerous. And our triggers, they feel dangerous. So when we're triggered, it's like, I'm not listening. I'm gonna attack. I'm gonna lean in. I'm gonna blah 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 blah. When we listen to people, they are our solution. Our people are our solution. So when we actually take the time to ask them questions, insightful questions like you're doing with me, that's where we pull out the gold. That's where we pull out the richness.
Mhm.
That's where we become their leader, their champion. If we just say, I'm the leader, you got to listen to me, they're not listening to you. They'll pretend they're listening to you so they can get their paycheck, but they don't care. But if they're listening to you because they want to listen to you, because they know you got their back, you're there for them and you care about them, you can move the world.
Mhm. Is there anything right now that you're still afraid of? I mean, I can't think of anything more scary than being in that ring. So when you're in your when you're consulting, when you're doing your business and expanding your network and all that kind of stuff, you're in meetings, you're doing deals. Is there anything now that frightens you? I mean, in comparison,
Yeah.
it shouldn't be that scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's one thing that does frighten me. Um, you know, when the odds are in your favor and people are expecting you to be a certain thing,
Mhm.
it's scary to know that it might not happen. So if you're a big if you're going against the underdog and you're the person who's everyone's expecting to crush it out of the park, that's terrifying to me
Mhm.
because now that person has the risk. They're expected to do the right thing. So what happens when they screw up? And so I look at one thing that's really served me in my journey is transparency, is being really, really open and saying, I'm going to give my best every single time. But that does not mean that every dog has its day. And sometimes I might have all the experience, all the ability, all the know-how, but it wasn't my day.
Mhm.
That can happen. And it's like, it sucks when that happens because then the world's like, oh, I guess you're not as good anymore. Oh, I guess you're old. Oh, I guess it's this. Oh, I guess it's that. And all of their stuff comes out. And it's always a constant reminder for me to say, Cliff, just do the best that you can.
Mhm.
Pour into you, and then the rest will work out in the way that it needs to work into.
Mhm.
But if I do go into like, oh my goodness, all my fears, like then I wouldn't be getting to where I need to go. I wouldn't be learning the lessons I need to learn, or even re-remembering the lessons that I need to learn on the journey.
Mhm. Now, when it comes to business, branding and marketing is so important. Those two things go hand in hand. It gets you to different areas in the world, it gets you to meet new people, gets people to notice you. For you, that transition from being a UFC fighter to being your own entrepreneur, your own business, was the branding of being a UFC fighter a pro or a con? Did it help? Did it not help? Did you wish you had it, or do you use it? How do you view that?
Yeah. So it was interesting. my logo guy was telling me not to brand with the UFC stuff. He told me to actually avoid it.
Mhm.
And the reason he was telling me to avoid it was because I've lost on TV. It's lost in a really bad way. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what the right answer was. The right answer became apparent when people looked at that UFC like, oh my goodness, you did what? And that's where I was like, okay, it's part of the brand. So it ultimately did make things easier to say, hey, I've done this thing, because it's a mental warfare game.
Mhm.
It's really, really, you have to mentally be really, really strong to go through a process and even get to that space. So in that aspect, it really, really helped me tighten everything down and get my message in place.
Mhm. Now, when you work with your clients, one of your specialties are is having that champion mindset, that mental game. How does one improve their mental game? How does one develop a champion mindset that you have?
Yeah. So I actually have 6 principles I work on, and one of them is called the 3 C's: clarity, confidence, commitment. And so we have belief systems, right? And I say belief systems are not necessarily good or bad, but they can be empowering or disempowering. And I ask people, okay, what belief systems do you have, and what can you do to make them empowering? The 3 things that I will say that are crucial in business are getting marketing, your sales, and your leadership in place. If you can get those 3 things in place, you stand a chance. Now, most people don't like selling,
Mhm.
and it's due to a faulty belief on saying, like, oh, you got the crooked salesperson coming in, or someone calling you and you're at dinner, like, what are they doing? And it's like sales doesn't have to be that. So I do a reshift in how people are thinking about things. You have things that you like. I have things that I like. You have things you'll buy. I have things that I'll buy. And all sales is, you have a product or a service, and you're putting it in, you're presenting it to someone who would work, letting them know the pros and the cons of going with you. And when they can understand that, everybody can win. Because even if it's not for that person, you can say, oh, well, do you know anyone who would be interested in that? Now that was tough for me in the beginning, because I thought sales was a certain way.
Mhm.
And I learned my lesson on, like, wait a minute, sales is nothing more than fighting skill sets. It's, you're a skilled fighter. And
Mhm.
if you're good at what you do, you're good at what you do, you get the results. And if you're not a skilled fighter, well, then you don't get the results. So the beauty of clarity, confidence, and commitment is, if you're clear on what you're doing, if you're confident in it, and if you're committed to it, you're moving in the right direction. Now, the beauty of it is also, if you're not clear, you're not confident, and you're not committed, you're still moving in the right direction, because at least you know. It's a game of awareness.
Mhm.
And so when you can get really, really aware of, okay, is my life working or is it not working? And if it's not working, well, why isn't it? Because there's solutions in there. And if it is working, well, great, celebrate yourself. Keep doing what you're doing.
Awesome. For yourself, you've been in this area of business coaching. You go and speak. Was there something with regards to speaking that got you to think, "Hey, I need to work on these speaking skills too," because that's not what I've been punching all my life.
Yeah,
Is there
yeah. It
is
was,
speaking something that you have to think about more? Because lots of people are afraid of speaking.
yeah, so I wasn't afraid of speaking, which really, really served me. And I did my first speech, and one of my clients was actually there, and she goes, like, yeah, I felt really good. I just didn't know what to do afterwards. I didn't know what actions to take afterwards. And so I sat down and I came up with a framework. Now, I've been constantly polishing the framework as I'm going through it, but my biggest thing was take them through a process and a journey, walk them through the steps that they have to take and what actions are the most important for them to take. And so I'll give an example with clarity, confidence, and commitment. I talk about being very intentional. When we're intentional, we can be clear, confident, and committed. Like if we're hailing a taxi driver, taxi, where are you going? And you're like, I don't know. I was just hoping you would drive me around. Like, okay, well, that's a piss taxi driver, and then you just haven't supported them in any way because they don't even know where to take you. But if you know, like my whole thing was I want to fight in the UFC in less than a year. I was very intentional with that. And then I was intentional with I want to support a billion people. But even that wasn't intentional enough because it's like, okay, how are you going to support that a billion people? And you get better at learning where to be intentional and what to do and how to do it. And I didn't know that I wasn't going to be doing it on my own. Like I literally thought when I said that this was the Clifford Stark show and I'm going to figure out how to make it happen. It was like, no, that's not true at all. This is the human show, and it's about serving people in the best way that you can serve them so that you lift them up and they lift you up at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of those skill sets is storytelling. And you mentioned before that the story that you tell yourself is what causes the limitations in your life. Now, lots of people are looking at a certain story or a certain situation, and they can't find anything that could be beneficial from that story. How do you help them change the narrative of something that is like devastating into something that's powerful for them to move on and succeed?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is what's so cool about our brains. Our brains are our friends or our enemies, depending on how we're using them. And I asked myself the question, how does this apply to me? Everything applies in some form or fashion if we choose for it to apply. If it doesn't, then our brain just shuts it off and says, oh, that's not going to work. Oh, well, that worked for such and such and it won't work for me. And so when you can, David Goggins, he talks about what if I pull this off? What if I this? What if I get to where I need to go? And I say, how does this apply to me? There's always something that I can apply to everything that I'm in. You know, I don't have my back screen, and some people might be looking at my giraffe over there. That's my boy's giraffe. And you have a back screen on right now, right? You got a suit and tie. You look really sharp, and like you put your stuff together really, really well. And then you got your mic. And so in my head, I'm like, oh yeah, I got to get a mic, right? The back screen, either I'm going to get the back screen or I'm not going to have it. Normally I have it, but I'm on a different laptop at the moment. But there's always application. It's whether we're seeing the application or not.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really interesting, one thing that I learned about entrepreneurship, if we see a burning fire, we want to put it out by nature. It's our natural thing to do. I got to put this out. I got to put this out. I got to take care of this. I got to take care of that. Go towards your goal. Go towards your goal and ask yourself the question, is this serving my goal or is this not serving my goal? Because just as I was that overweight kid and I lost the weight, if I would have just been going all over the place, like, oh, well, yeah, there's always going to be there's burning buildings everywhere all the time. Are you putting out the burning buildings you're supposed to be putting out? Or are you putting out burning buildings because you think you have to put them out?
Right.
And that's what gets people in trouble.
Mm-hmm. Wow, very, very powerful stuff and great insight on perspective. Now, throughout your entire journey, you went from a very overweight kid to a fighter to now being a person who's helping lots of people, impacting lots of people, over a billion people in the world. The mindset is a big difference from one to another. You went from somebody who has probably very, very low ego to somebody whose ego is, I'm the best in the world, to now I'm here to serve everybody. Have you been able to maintain a certain type of egotistical balance from one to another? And how do you
so I look
dial
at
one down and stuff like that?
I look at this has been one of my superpowers actually. Uh I call it self-acceptance, self-awareness, self-transformation. So self-acceptance is saying I can be all things and anything. If I put in enough reps, I can become the thing that I want to become. When I accept it, then can become aware of it. It's actually terrifying for people to say, I could do bad things, or I can do it incorrectly, or I can make mistakes. So instead, they just,
Mhm.
I'm not that. No, you are that. You are all things. And what are you putting the reps in? And so I think of life like this. Like, let's say we have this pencil right here. And there's a bunch of things that I can do with this pencil. I can write with it. I can stab someone with it. I can play with it. I can make a game out of it. I can drum with it. I can do a bunch of things with this thing. And so in life, it's the ones who are most creative and innovative and willing to take action in the innovation, because I can also just talk about all the things I can do with it and not take any action and nothing occurs. Like, all right, I have all these things and nothing, right? And so as I go through the process of life, I am both egotistical and I am a human just like anybody else. See, the thing that gets people in trouble, they think champions think they're better than everybody else. It's the opposite.
Mm.
Champions know they're like anybody else. So they know their every rep matters. Everything they do matters. If they don't do it, there's someone else who is.
Right.
They're not sitting around going like, well, that's the champion, so I guess I'll just sit and wait for him to relinquish it. They're coming after you.
Mhm.
There's a target on your back. And the champion wouldn't have it any other way.
Mhm. Wow, great stuff. Okay, we're gonna put you on the world stage, and if you
Yeah.
have a few minutes to share with the world one message that you want everybody to remember Clifford for, what's that one message?
I want you all to know how amazing you are. You guys are great. And we get to come together and serve one another. Let's do that as much as we possibly can. And if I serve you in any way, let me know. And if there's something that you can serve me with, let me know.
Awesome, sounds great. I gotta admit, this interview has gone by very, very fast. It's very fascinating. Like I said, not every day I talk to a person who fights for a living, so that's absolutely amazing. But before I let you go, I got five quick questions, rapid fire. Give me the first thing that comes to mind.
All
You're
right, let's
stranded.
have some fun.
You're stranded on a deserted island. One food to eat for the rest of your life. No consequence.
Pizza.
Um, who would you want to go toe to? No, sorry. Let me rephrase that question. As of today, what would actually convince you to say yes? I'll go back in the ring.
My family's life on the line.
Hollywood calls and says, "Hey, Cliff, we think your life is amazing. Great story. We want to do a biopic on you. Who would you cast to play you?"
Denzel Washington, baby.
Denzel Washington shows up at your door and goes, "Hey, Cliff, I got casted to play you for this amazing biopic. I gotta go train. I gotta go fight. I gotta know everything about you." And you go, "Don't worry about it. Let's go out and have a great night. Let's share some stories." What does that night look like to you?
Oh my goodness. That is absolutely amazing. We're probably gonna go to a Starbucks, have some coffees, uh, go have some. Hopefully he likes lobster tails and steak because I definitely want to take care of Denzel Washington. And we're just gonna have deep conversation. I've heard this man um with Will Smith and speaking to Will and sharing his knowledge and his wisdom. And I'd love to have some Denzel Washington knowledge and wisdom poured. Hopefully, I would be able to do the same for him.
Mhm. You get to have a dream fight. Anybody that you choose, retired, not retired, dead or alive, who would you like to be able to square off with?
I would create somebody because I thought about this.
Mhm.
Gary Vander.
Yeah.
Okay, so it would have like a Gary Vanderchuck energy, and it would have like a Fedor's. Like Fedor's actually the best fighting heavyweight ever,
Mhm.
Fedor's ability. And I like to challenge myself, right? So there's not a crazier challenge than going against something like that. Something that has the emotion of Gary Vaynerchuk and the skill Fedor Emelian.
Wow, you're putting yourself up against an impossible feat, but I'm sure you got it all
I'd
planned
probably die. Yeah,
out.
I'd probably die. But the cool thing is, if I pull it off, see, this is the risk reward thing again. And like, if I pull that, I beat that thing.
Awesome. Give me a number from 1 to 5.
5.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if you had to relate success to a romantic comedy, how is a romantic comedy like Success?
Oh, that's interesting. Our romantic comedy is like Success is there's going to be a punchline. You're going to get laughed at. And when you get the result, it's romantic. But you're going to definitely there's going to be some laughter along the way.
Nicely done. So that's how Success is like a romantic comedy. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Like get your information and your content and all that stuff.
Yeah, so there's 3 ways. You can message me on Facebook or LinkedIn under Clifford Starks. Now, I'm going to be a little bit risque and say if this message did really, really touch you, you can text me at 602-403-6957 and text I'm a fighter and I heard you on Fong's podcast. And I'll give you a gift for that too.
Wow. Awesome. Not every day everybody shares their number. uh any
No.
any final words from you that you would like to share?
Yeah, I want to first acknowledge and appreciate you, Fong, for allowing me to be on your stage and your platform. And yeah, I hope I was able to provide value to everybody as they went through this. And even though we don't always know that we're being watched, we do appreciate that we're being watched. So if this message resonated with you in any way, you don't have to text me. But if you give like, a love, a heart, give some love and respect, would absolutely love that.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that. For everybody, make sure you get connected with Clifford. Obviously, lots of great insight, lots of great perspective, a lot of fun chatting with. And I thank you so much for spending some time with me here. Great stories, great value. And I can't wait to chat with you again. It's been amazing. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Fong. Appreciate it.
Great. For everybody, he's Cliff. My name is Fong. And until next time, today is the day to lock your peak potential. We'll see you later.